Have you ever wondered what might have happened if the Second World War had gone differently? If the Nazis had won? Join me as we explore a chilling alternate history. Nazi Germany was not only fighting with tanks and rifles. They were racing ahead in science. Jet fighters, guided missiles, even early nuclear research. According to Richard Overy, if the war had lasted just a few more years, the Reich could have beaten America to the atomic bomb. Imagine Hiroshima, but with Berlin holding the trigger. The Cold War we know, America versus the Soviets, might instead have been America versus a nuclear-armed Reich. And in that world, who would dare to resist? But history is not just about battles. It's about culture. According to William Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, Hitler planned to erase entire identities, rewriting art, music, and even cinema to glorify the state. Free thought would vanish. Books would be replaced by propaganda. Film replaced by fear. Instead of the civil rights movements of the 1960s, imagine decades of silence. Instead of jazz, rock, or hip-hop, only the echoes of state-approved marches. Instead of celebrating diversity, entire cultures would have been erased. But history also shows us this: no empire lasts forever. Yale historian Donald Kagan argues that authoritarian systems collapse under their own weight. Resistance would have spread, from hidden radio broadcasts in occupied Europe to independence struggles in Asia and Africa. Rebellions would rise. Perhaps slowly, perhaps brutally, but inevitably, even in this darkest timeline, humanity's hunger for freedom would never die. The Allied victory was not guaranteed. It was fragile, bloody, and uncertain. Historian Antony Beevor argues that World War II was not just about nations, it was about the survival of humanity itself. So when we ask what if Hitler had won, we are not just entertaining an alternate history. We are reminding ourselves of the precious reality we live in today, a reality built on freedom, on diversity, and on the sacrifices of millions who stood against tyranny. Tyranny can take many forms. Sometimes it wears a uniform, sometimes it hides behind a desk. It's not always obvious, which is why we must remain vigilant. We must stand up for what's right, even when it's unpopular. We must fight for freedom, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. The world we live in today is a testament to the power of resistance. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail. So let us never forget the past. Let us learn from it, but let us not allow it to define us. Let us look to the future and build a world that is better, fairer, and more just. A world where diversity is celebrated, where freedom is cherished, and where peace is the guiding light. Let us work towards that world, not just for ourselves, but for all of humanity. Because the future is not something we inherit, it's something we create. Now, obviously, as this is a video about Hitler winning the war, the first thing we need to get out of the way is how he doesn't win the war in our timeline. Hitler took his own life in 1945 when it became clear that Germany was going to lose the war. But in an alternate timeline, Hitler lives to see the end of the war and wins it. And the reason for this is actually pretty simple. All Hitler really needed to do was either delay the American D-Day invasion by 2 weeks, successfully invade Britain, or not screw up his invasion of Russia. And as a matter of fact, all three of these things were actually possible. For example, at the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's generals actually thought the Americans should be defeated. All Hitler had to do was wait 2 more weeks until reinforcements arrived. And according to historian Antony Beevor, there's a chance the Allies would have lost the war. But Hitler didn't wait, and the battle eventually failed. There's also the Battle of Britain, which Hitler almost won. Luftwaffe commanders believed they could defeat Britain in 3 weeks. But once again, Hitler got impatient and extended the air campaign, allowing Britain to prepare and eventually win the battle. Finally, there's the German invasion of Russia. Had Hitler listened to his generals and retreated during the winter, he likely would have won against the unprepared Soviets. But once again, he got impatient and the offensive stalled, costing Germany the war. But let's say Hitler managed to win all of these battles. What would the world look like today? As we know, in our timeline, after the D-Day landings, it was pretty much game over for Nazi Germany. So in this alternate timeline, let's say that Hitler manages to delay the D-Day landings by 2 weeks, enough time for reinforcements to arrive. The Germans might actually stand a chance here. In fact, the Germans might even win the battle. But now the Americans would be prepared for the German invasion and might actually win. But let's say the Germans win the battle. What happens next? Well, probably nothing. After D-Day, the British and Americans could regroup and launch a counterattack. Without D-Day, they wouldn't have to. With a successful D-Day, the Germans would be exhausted and likely not be able to defend properly. The Allies would push forward and take back all of France. And while the Germans could resist, they wouldn't be able to last long. Eventually, the Germans would surrender, ending World War II and possibly the world as we know it. Hitler's rise to power was fueled by the Treaty of Versailles, which harshly punished Germany for their role in World War I. Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939 and subsequent actions led to the start of World War II. His goals were twofold: gain territorial expansion and overturn the Treaty of Versailles. By conquering Europe, Hitler aimed to establish German dominance and create a utopian society based on racial purity and national pride. He accomplished some of this through the use of blitzkrieg tactics, which allowed him to quickly conquer most of Europe. But he ultimately failed in his goal to conquer the Soviet Union and failed to realize that the United States would enter the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor. After Hitler's death, World War II came to an end with the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. This led to the formation of the United Nations and the beginning of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Nuremberg trials held German leaders accountable for their actions during the war, establishing important legal precedents for international justice. But what if the outcome of World War II had been different? What if the Nazis had won? In an alternate timeline where the Nazis had achieved victory, Europe would have looked vastly different. Nazi Germany would have controlled much of the continent, imposing their ideology and policies on the people they ruled. This raises questions about the nature of power and control, as well as the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression. The consequences of a Nazi victory would have been catastrophic, including the implementation of their plans for racial purity and the elimination of those deemed undesirable. It's a chilling thought experiment that reminds us of the importance of fighting for freedom and democracy. Thank you so much for watching.